The classroom was dead silent. Emily Carter, a 17-year-old with sharp brown eyes and an even sharper mind, sat at her desk, staring down at her graded test paper. A bright red 100% was marked boldly at the top. She should have been smiling, proud of her hard work, but instead, she felt the weight of every stare in the room. Mr. Leonard Hayes, the math teacher, stood at the front, his face twisted in disbelief. He tapped his marker against the whiteboard, shaking his head as if trying to wake himself from a dream. "This," he said, pointing at Emily's paper, his voice tight, "is impossible." A few students snickered. Others watched in quiet confusion. Emily clenched her jaw. "What does he mean? Impossible?" Hayes folded his arms. "No one in this class has ever scored a perfect 100% on my advanced test, and then you—" He paused, glancing at her like she didn't belong. Suddenly managed to do it, and by such a huge margin over the others. The room tensed. Emily felt her stomach drop. She knew what he was implying. She had always been one of the smartest students in school, but Hayes never acknowledged her intelligence. Instead, he praised Logan Mitchell and Macy Reynolds, the white kids from wealthy families, while barely looking at Emily when she raised her hand. She sat up straighter. "I studied hard for this test. You gave us the review sheet, and I don't believe it." Hayes cut in, his voice sharper now. "There's no way you got this score fairly." A gasp rippled through the class. Emily's heart pounded. "Are you accusing me of cheating?" Hayes didn't blink. "I am." Laughter erupted from Logan's side of the room. Macy covered her mouth, pretending to be shocked, but her smirk was clear. Emily's fingers curled into fists. "That's not true," she shot back. "I've always been good at math. I worked for this." Hayes grabbed her test paper, waving it in the air. "Then explain how you solve these problems with such precision. Show me your notes." Emily swallowed hard. I don't have them. I did most of the work in my head." Hayes scoffed. "Right. So you magically solved college-level calculus in your head? I don't think so." He turned to the class. "If she really understood this test, she should be able to rework these problems right now." Murmurs spread across the room. Some students looked at Emily with pity. Others, like Logan, smirked, leaning back in their chairs to enjoy the show. Emily's breath came faster. Her hands felt clammy. Hayes slammed a blank sheet of paper on her desk. "Go on. Let's see." "You do it again." She stared at the paper. She knew she could solve the equations again, but that wasn't the point. The point was that no one else was being treated like this. She lifted her chin. "Why don't you make Logan or Macy redo their answers?" Hayes' eyes flashed. "They didn't score a perfect 100%. You did." Emily's anger burned in her chest. She could feel the sting of humiliation crawling up her spine. "Maybe," she said slowly. "You just don't believe a black girl can be smarter than your favorite students." A heavy silence fell over the room. Hayes' jaw tightened. His face turned red. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," Emily said, her voice steady. "You've never liked me, never called on me in class, never praised me when I answered correctly. But now that I've beaten everyone, suddenly I must be a cheater." A few students shifted in their seats. The tension was thick, suffocating. Hayes' lips curled into a sneer. "I don't care what nonsense you're spewing. I am reporting this to the principal. Until then—" He yanked the test paper from her desk and crumpled it in his fist. "Your grade is invalid." Emily's stomach twisted. "This isn't fair," she whispered. "Life isn't fair," Hayes snapped. Just then, the classroom door swung open. Principal Marcus Dean, a tall, serious-looking black man in his late 50s, stepped inside. His sharp eyes scanned the room before settling on Hayes. "Mr. Hayes," he said, his deep voice calm but firm, "can I have a word?" Hayes stiffened. "Sir, I was just—" Dean held up a hand. "Outside. Now." Hayes hesitated but followed. As soon as the door closed behind them, the room erupted into whispers. Logan chuckled under his breath. "Guess your little act didn't work, Carter." Emily ignored him, staring at the door. Her pulse pounded in her ears. Something felt off. Moments later, the door swung open again. This time, Principal Dean stepped inside alone. His expression was unreadable as he looked around the room. Finally, his gaze settled on Emily. "Miss Carter," he said, "could you come with me?" Emily's throat went dry. She grabbed her bag and stood up, her legs shaking slightly as she followed him out. As soon as they stepped into the hallway, she saw Ms. Perez, the school's guidance counselor, standing beside a laptop on a rolling cart. The screen was paused on security camera footage. Dean turned to her. "Do you know what this is?" Emily nodded slowly. "The classroom CCTV footage." Dean nodded. Then, without another word, he pressed play. On the screen, earlier that morning, before class even started, Hayes was at his desk, flipping through the stack of graded tests. When he reached Emily's, he stared at it for a long time. His lips moved as if he was mumbling to himself. Then, suddenly, he clenched his jaw and slammed the paper down. The footage continued. Minutes before the test was returned, Hayes glanced around the empty classroom, pulled out his phone, and typed something. He picked up Emily's test again, shaking his head, muttering under his breath, "There's no way in hell she's that smart." Emily's fists clenched. What did this mean? Why was Hayes tampering with her test? The hallway outside the classroom felt like a pressure cooker. Principal Marcus Dean stood tall, his presence commanding respect as he faced Mr. Leonard Hayes. Emily Carter, still trembling from the confrontation in class, watched silently as Miss Perez adjusted the laptop screen to replay the damning footage of Hayes tampering with her test earlier that morning. Dean's voice was calm but firm. "Mr. Hayes, you've been at this school for over 20 years. I expected better from you." Hayes's face flushed red. "This is absurd. You can't possibly take the word of a teenager over mine." Dean didn't flinch. "It's not just her word, it's the evidence." He gestured toward the laptop. "And it's not just today. We've reviewed months of security footage. This isn't the first time you've altered grades or singled out students based on bias." Emily's heart sank as realization hit her. Hayes wasn't just targeting her. He'd done this before, to others who may have never spoken up. She clenched her fists, trying to steady herself. Ms. Perez stepped closer, her tone gentle yet unyielding. "Emily is not in trouble here, Mr. Hayes, but we are taking this very seriously. Your actions will be reported to the school board immediately." Hayes sputtered, his composure cracking. "You're making a huge mistake. Do you know what this will do to my reputation?" Dean's eyes narrowed. "Your reputation? What about theirs?" He pointed at Emily. "What about every student you've undermined because of your prejudice?" At that moment, the classroom door burst open. Logan Mitchell and Macy Reynolds appeared, their expressions smug, clearly expecting to see Emily being reprimanded. Instead, they froze at the sight of Hayes, looking cornered and defensive. "What's going on?" Logan asked, glancing between the adults. Dean turned to them. "Nothing you need to worry about. Go back to class." But Logan lingered, his gaze shifting suspiciously to Emily. "So she really did cheat, right? That's why everyone's so worked up." Emily felt a surge of anger but forced herself to stay calm. Before she could respond, Dean cut in sharply. "No one cheated, Logan. The only person guilty of misconduct here is Mr. Hayes." Logan's smirk faltered, and Macy grabbed his arm, pulling him away. As the door clicked shut behind them, Hayes exploded. "This is outrageous! You're ruining my career over some grainy video." Dean's voice hardened. "Ruining your career?" "No, Mr. Hayes. You did that yourself. Effective immediately, you are suspended pending further investigation. Collect your belongings and leave the premises." Hayes opened his mouth to argue, but no words came out. His shoulders slumped in defeat as 2 security officers arrived to escort him off campus. For the first time, Emily saw fear flicker across his face, not for losing his job, but for being exposed. As Hayes disappeared down the hall, Dean turned to Emily with an unexpected smile. "Miss Carter," he said warmly, "you've shown incredible resilience, and because of that, Something remarkable has happened." Emily blinked, unsure what he meant. "Sir?" Dean nodded. "We contacted several academic organizations after reviewing your performance. They were impressed, not just by your perfect score, but by how you handled this situation. You've earned yourself a full scholarship." Emily's breath caught. "A what?" "A full ride," Ms. Perez clarified, her eyes shining with pride. "To any university of your choice." Emily's knees nearly buckled. Tears welled up in her eyes as the weight of everything finally hit her. The injustice, the fight, and now this overwhelming victory. I don't even know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Dean replied kindly. "Just keep doing what you're doing. The world needs more people like you." Later that evening, as Emily scrolled through congratulatory messages online, she stumbled upon something unexpected. A private message from a blocked account. The text read, "You think you've won, but you've only scratched the surface. Watch your back." Her blood ran cold. Who could have sent it, and what did they mean? The cafeteria buzzed with energy as Emily Carter sat at her usual table, scrolling through her phone. Her inbox was flooded with messages, some congratulatory, others skeptical, but she couldn't ignore the stares from across the room. Logan, Mitchell, and Macy Reynolds were huddled together, whispering loudly enough for their words to carry. "Biggest scam of the year," Logan muttered under his breath, shaking his head dramatically. Macy smirked, flipping her blonde hair over her shoulder. "Yeah, I mean, come on. A full scholarship? For cheating?" Emily clenched her jaw but tried to focus on the positive messages filling her screen. Friends, classmates she barely knew, and even alumni were reaching out to commend her bravery. Still, the negativity lingered like a shadow she couldn't shake. She sighed, putting her phone down. She wasn't in the mood for drama today, or ever again, but Logan apparently had other plans. He stood up abruptly, drawing attention from nearby tables. With a cocky grin, he turned toward Emily, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Yo, Emily!" he called out loud enough for half the cafeteria to hear. "Tell us, how does it feel to play the victim and get rewarded for it?" A few students gasped, while others exchanged uneasy glances. Emily froze for a moment, then slowly turned to face him. Her heart raced, but she forced herself to stay calm. "Excuse me?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. Logan shrugged, pretending to be nonchalant. "You heard me. You cheated, got caught, and instead of owning up to it, you went crying to the principal like a little kid." Macy crossed her arms, nodding smugly beside him. Totally pathetic. Emily pushed back her chair and stood. The cafeteria fell silent, all eyes glued to the unfolding scene. She took a deep breath, her voice steady despite the anger bubbling inside her. "The only person who got exposed here was Mr. Hayes," she said coldly. "I worked hard for that test and earned my grade. Just because you couldn't beat me doesn't mean I cheated." Logan's smirk faltered for a split second, but he quickly recovered. "Please, we all know you got lucky." Emily stepped closer, her gaze piercing. "Lucky?" she repeated, her tone laced with quiet fury. "Where was my luck when Mr. Hayes ignored me every time I raised my hand? Where was my luck when I had to study twice as hard just to get noticed? Or are you just mad that a black girl outsmarted you?" The cafeteria went dead silent. Logan's face flushed red, his confidence crumbling under the weight of her words. For a brief moment, he looked like he might argue, but instead, he muttered something inaudible and stormed off, Macy trailing behind him. A wave of relief washed over Emily as applause erupted around her. Some students clapped, while others gave her approving nods, but Emily didn't need their validation. She already knew she'd proven her point, not just to Logan, but to everyone watching. Later that evening, as Emily scrolled through social media, she stumbled upon anonymous comments flooding the school's online forum. Posts accused her of lying, claiming the footage was fake or edited to frame Mr. Hayes. One comment stood out. "She's using race to deflect from her own mistakes." Her stomach churned. How could people twist the truth like this? She wanted to respond, to defend herself, but her mom stopped her mid-typing. "Don't give them power," her mom said firmly, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "You've already won by staying true to yourself." Emily nodded, though doubt lingered in her mind. Why were some people so determined to tear her down? The next morning, Emily arrived at school to find Principal Dean waiting for her near the entrance. His expression was serious, yet kind. "Emily," he said, "we need to talk. Something's come up." Her heart skipped a beat. What now? The auditorium buzzed with anticipation as Principal Marcus Dean stood at the podium, his tall frame commanding attention. Students, teachers, and even a few parents filled the rows of seats, their murmurs creating a low hum that echoed through the space. Emily Carter sat near the front, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She could feel the weight of every gaze on her, but instead of shrinking under it, she held her head high. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about something much bigger. Dean adjusted the microphone, his voice cutting through the chatter like a knife. "Good morning, everyone. I won't take much of your time, but there's something important we need to address." The room fell silent, all eyes fixed on him. He paused for effect before continuing. "Yesterday, Mr. Leonard Hayes was suspended after evidence confirmed a pattern of discrimination and bias in his classroom." Gasps rippled through the crowd, followed by whispers of disbelief and anger. Some students exchanged knowing looks. Others sat rigid, absorbing the truth. Dean's expression hardened. "But this goes beyond one teacher. It's about the culture we allow, or don't allow, in our schools. Let me be clear, Lincoln High will never be a place where students are judged by anything other than their abilities." Emily felt a lump rise in her throat. She glanced around the room, noticing nods of agreement and even a few tears. For so long she'd felt invisible, dismissed because of the color of her skin. But now, here she was, sitting in an auditorium full of people who were finally listening. Dean turned toward Emily, his tone softening. "Miss Carter, please stand." Her heart raced as she hesitated for a moment, then slowly rose to her feet. The spotlight felt heavy, but she reminded herself why she was standing there: to fight for fairness, respect, and justice. Dean smiled, warmly at her, his pride evident. "I want every student in this room to know," he said, addressing the audience, "that Miss Carter didn't just fight for herself. She fought for fairness, for respect, and because of her courage, real change is happening here at Lincoln High." Applause erupted, growing louder with each passing second. Students began to stand, some whistling while others clapped enthusiastically. Even a few teachers dabbed at their eyes, moved by the moment. Emily's vision blurred as tears welled up, but she blinked them back, determined to stay composed. This wasn't just her victory. It belonged to everyone who had ever been underestimated or treated unfairly. Dean raised a hand to quiet the crowd, though his smile remained. "For her excellence, resilience, and leadership, I'm proud to announce that Miss Carter has received a full academic scholarship to any university of her choice." The cheers shook the auditorium. Emily covered her mouth, overwhelmed by the outpouring of support. She scanned the room, taking it all in, the clapping, the smiles, the undeniable sense of unity. In that moment she realized how far she'd come. Hayes had tried to tear her down, to make her doubt herself. Instead, his actions had only strengthened her resolve and elevated her higher than she ever imagined. Later that evening, as Emily scrolled through congratulatory messages online, she stumbled upon another anonymous post, but this one was different. It read, "You've inspired us to speak up too. Thank you." Attached was a screenshot of an email sent to the school board detailing similar experiences with Hayes. Dozens of former students had come forward, sharing stories of bias and unfair treatment. Emily's heart swelled with emotion. Her bravery had sparked a movement. As weeks passed, life at Lincoln High began to shift. New policies were implemented to ensure fairness and accountability among faculty members. Teachers underwent mandatory training on cultural sensitivity, and students formed committees to discuss inclusivity and representation. Emily became a symbol of hope, not just within her school, but across the district. One afternoon, as she walked through the halls, she noticed Jake Thompson, a quiet classmate who always seemed to admire her from afar, waiting by her locker. His hands were stuffed nervously into his pockets, but his smile was warm. "Hey," he said softly. "Just wanted to say, I think what you did was amazing." Emily smiled back, feeling a flicker of warmth in her chest. "Thanks, Jake. That means a lot." He hesitated, then added, "If you ever need someone to talk to or, grab coffee or something, you know where to find me." Before she could respond, he gave a small wave and walked away, leaving Emily grinning to herself. Maybe, just maybe, good things really did come to those who stood up for what was right. A month later, Emily learned that Hayes had been permanently dismissed from teaching due to ongoing investigations into discriminatory practices. It was a bittersweet victory. He would no longer harm another student, but the scars he left behind would take time to heal. Still, Emily knew she'd played a part in making the world a little fairer, a little kinder. As she packed her bag at the end of the school year, ready to step into a brighter future, she whispered to herself, "Never let anyone tell you what you're worth.